There's a reason, Capricorn, why you've always felt just slightly out of place, even in rooms filled with love. Why your silence held more truth than their loud opinions. Why, no matter how much you gave, there was always a quiet ache echoing in your chest, like your soul was somewhere else, waiting to be found. This isn't a flaw in your character. This is the sacred whisper of your design. Because you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break the mold. And now, something extraordinary is happening. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. The universe is removing the false ties that have held you in place for far too long. Not because you failed, Capricorn, but because you've outgrown the illusion of belonging. You see, this isn't the loss of a family, or a friend, or a place. It's the return of your true self. And today, in this message, we're going to uncover what that really means. So before we go any further, I want you to pause and feel your own breath. Feel the weight you've been carrying. And if your spirit is ready, type these words in the comments right now. I was never meant to belong. I was meant to rise. Because what I'm about to reveal to you will explain every unspoken ache you've ever buried. And by the end of this message, you'll no longer see your disconnection as a wound, but as a cosmic invitation to finally become who you were always meant to be. Part 1. The Sacred Discomfort. Capricorn, you've always been the one to carry weight in silence. From an early age, you noticed it, the way people around you moved with ease, while you moved with purpose. The way others laughed without hesitation, while your eyes scanned the room, already anticipating the next responsibility, the next consequence, the next shift in energy. You didn't ask to be the anchor, but you became it. Because no one else could. And no one else would. But here's the part no one talks about, the cost of being the strong one. That quiet ache inside you. The one that lingers even in rooms filled with family. That's not weakness, Capricorn. That's the sacred discomfort of a soul that doesn't fit the frame it was placed in. You were taught to be proud of your resilience, and rightfully so. But no one asked how it feels to carry everyone and still not feel seen. How it feels to be the reliable one, and yet entirely misunderstood. The truth is, Capricorn, you've always been walking a slightly different path than those around you. Not because you're broken, but because your blueprint is divinely different. Have you ever been in a conversation, surrounded by loved ones, and suddenly felt like you were observing, not participating? You're there, but you're not really there. Smiling, nodding, but inside, quietly drifting. That feeling is not a flaw. It's the first whisper of separation. It's your soul recognizing that the space you were born into may no longer be the space you're meant to stay in. The people who raised you, who grew with you, they saw one version of you. But growth, real growth, has a cost. And sometimes that cost is becoming unrecognizable to the people who only knew the earlier chapters of your story. Capricorn, listen to me closely. You are not crazy for feeling this distance. You are not cold. You are awakening. The discomfort you're feeling now is not rejection, it is divine preparation. Your spirit is trying to stretch, but the walls around you haven't moved. And now, the universe is gently nudging you towards something higher. You can't carry everyone up the mountain, Capricorn. Not everyone is meant to climb. Some were only meant to exist in the valley. And as painful as it feels, that sacred discomfort is the first proof that you were chosen to rise. In the comments, type, I feel the shift, and I'm ready to rise. Let your soul speak before your mind questions it. Because in the next part of this journey, we will go even deeper. Into the place where love and loyalty collide, and what it means when your own blood starts to feel like a cage. Part 2. When blood feels like a cage. Capricorn, no one wants to admit this out loud. But sometimes, the people we share blood with are the very ones who keep us small. Not out of malice. Not always. But out of comfort, out of habit. And sometimes, out of fear. You see, when you've been the dependable one for so long, the family begins to rely on a version of you that no longer exists. They memorize your past. They quote your responsibilities. But they ignore your becoming. And slowly, without knowing it, you begin to shrink. To survive. To keep the peace. to not cause ripples in a system that benefits from your silence. Capricorn, you have stayed longer than most would. Out of love, out of loyalty, but also out of guilt. That guilt was planted in you early. In every don't talk back. In every why can't you be more like them. In every you think you're better, that followed the rare moment you tried to express your true self. Let me say this clearly. Being different is not betrayal. Needing space is not rebellion. Choosing your soul is not selfish. And yet, every time you've stepped out of line, not to cause harm, but to breathe, there was a look, a word, a silence that said, Capricorn, how dare you change? The truth is, they were never reacting to your flaws. They were reacting to the mirror you became. Your growth reminded them of their stagnation. Your boundaries reminded them of where they lacked them. Your silence made them confront their own noise. Capricorn, family is meant to be a foundation, not a prison. And if staying in that system requires you to dim your light, then that isn't home. It's a holding cell. You were not born to carry the generational wounds of others on your back. You were born to heal forward, not bleed backward. And if they can't see that, if they choose their comfort over your becoming, then the most loving thing you can do is walk away in peace. And let your absence speak what your presence no longer can. In the comments, if this resonates, type, I release the guilt. I honor my becoming. Because in the next chapter, we climb even higher. To a place few reach. A place made only for those who were born for the mountain. Part 3. You were born for the mountain. Capricorn, some souls are designed to stay close to the fire, to sit in the circle, to follow the traditions, to repeat the patterns. You were not one of them. You were designed to climb, to rise where the air is thin, to walk paths so steep, only the resilient dare to step. And this path, it's not glamorous. It's not filled with applause. It's not even understood. Because the higher you go, the quieter it gets. Not because you're alone, but because so few can survive what you're built for. Capricorn, your mountain is not just a metaphor. It is the very essence of your soul's assignment. You carry within you a strength that intimidates the unhealed, a depth that unsettles the shallow, and a clarity that threatens those who thrive in confusion. You were never meant to stay at the base, waiting for approval. You were never meant to wait for their permission to become what destiny already declared. Every struggle you faced, every betrayal, every misunderstanding, every silence, it was preparing your feet for the climb. They saw stubbornness. God saw endurance. They saw distance. The universe saw focus. And now you're being summoned to rise, even if it means walking alone. Let me be clear. The view from the mountain is not just scenic. It is sacred, because it gives you perspective. It shows you what's worth keeping, and what you've been carrying simply out of habit. It gives you space to breathe, to think, to feel your own heartbeat, not theirs, to define yourself not by memory, but by mission. But this is also where the loneliness creeps in. The ache, the second guessing. You look down and wonder, should I have stayed? Should I have made it easier for them to love me? Did I choose myself too soon? No, Capricorn. You chose truth over tradition. You chose your calling over their comfort. You chose to remember who you were before the world asked you to be someone else. And that's the essence of Ma-KT energy. Not just ambition, but divine elevation. If you feel this mountain rising in you, type in the comments, I was born to climb. I was never meant to settle. Because next, we'll face the hardest part of all. What happens when loyalty becomes the very chain that holds you back? Part 4. When loyalty becomes a cage. Capricorn, you love deeply, but you rarely say it out loud. Instead, you show it. Through consistency. Through protection. Through sacrifice. You're the one who stays. Even when it hurts. Even when you're crumbling inside. Even when no one thanks you for it. Because to you, loyalty isn't just a value. It's a vow. But what happens when the very thing that once made you feel honorable becomes the thing that keeps you stuck? You see, Capricorn, Your greatest strength, your loyalty, can become your heaviest chain when it's given to people who benefit from your silence. They don't ask how you feel. They don't ask what you need. They just expect you to keep showing up. Because you always have. And so, you stay. Long after the love has faded. Long after the connection has withered. Long after your spirit has been begging you to leave. You stay because you were taught that leaving is weakness. That turning your back on family or tradition is betrayal. That to love is to endure no matter the cost. But Capricorn, who told you that love and suffering were the same thing? Let me ask you something, and answer with your heart. When was the last time someone asked you how you were doing without expecting something in return? When was the last time your presence was valued, not just used? When was the last time you felt seen, not just relied upon? Because if your loyalty is only honored when it benefits them, and questioned the moment you need space, then you are not being loved. You are being controlled. And here's the truth most won't say aloud. Walking away from what drains you is not abandonment. It's sacred preservation. Capricorn, the universe is not asking you to become cold. It's asking you to become clear. It's asking you to stop sacrificing your peace for people who wouldn't notice your absence until they needed something. And yes, it will feel like betrayal at first. Yes, the guilt will be loud. Yes, you'll be called selfish, ungrateful, distant. But let me tell you something you may have never heard. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal. Staying small to make others comfortable is. If this speaks to your soul, type in the comments. My loyalty is sacred. I no longer give it where it's not honored. Because in the next part, Capricorn, we begin the turning point. The moment the universe begins introducing you to the true family your soul has been waiting for. Part 5, the real family is arriving. Capricorn, when the universe removes something from your life, it never leaves you empty. You may have lost a table you once sat at. You may have walked out of a house full of people who shared your blood, but never fully saw your soul. And for a while, the silence stings. For a while, you look around and wonder if you've made a mistake. But hear me now. That silence is sacred. It's the clearing before the arrival. Because what's coming next isn't familiar, but it's divine. Capricorn, you are being led toward the family that was written for your soul. Not your story. These are not people who need long explanations. They won't need your resume of sacrifice. They won't compare you to who you used to be. These are souls who see you now, fully, gently, deeply. They won't call your boundaries cold. They'll call them healthy. They won't shame your silence. They'll sit with it. They won't mock your ambition. They'll nurture it. This new family, they may not share your DNA, but they will recognize your vibration instantly, because their purpose aligns with yours, not competes. Capricorn, have you ever met someone, and without even knowing why, you felt safe? No performance. No pretending. No guilt. Just presence. That is what's coming. The ones who will see the depth in your silence, the strength in your stillness, the wisdom in your wounds. They won't ask you to shrink. They'll remind you to expand. And when you meet them, you'll suddenly understand why the universe had to move you, why the home you clung to had to fall apart, why the ones you begged to understand never could. Because if you had stayed there, you never would have been open to this. A chosen family, a soul alliance, a sacred mirror. And you'll look around and realize, I didn't lose family. I found the one I was always meant to build. If your heart feels this shift, type in the comments. I am ready to receive the souls that see me. Because Capricorn, what comes next isn't survival. It's belonging. And in the next part of this journey, we go even deeper into the power of elevation and why you no longer owe anyone an explanation for your rise. Part 6, Elevation over Explanation. Capricorn, there comes a moment when you no longer feel the need to defend who you've become. Not because you've grown cold, but because you've grown clear. You begin to realize the people who constantly need explanations were never listening. They were only reacting. And the more you explain, the more they twist your truth to fit their comfort. Capricorn, your elevation is not up for debate. It was written. It was earned. It was carved from the very stone that tried to bury you. So now, as you rise, don't waste your breath trying to get them to see it. They had their chance. They saw you tired. They saw you loyal. They saw you hurting and stayed comfortable in your pain. But now you are standing. Now you are expanding. Now you are becoming what your soul knew it was always meant to be. And that makes people uncomfortable. You'll notice it in the way they look at you now. The silence, the side comments, the sudden absence. And you may be tempted to run back, to explain, to soften your shine, to say, "It's still me, I just grew." But Capricorn, let me tell you something. You don't owe an explanation for your healing. You don't owe an apology for your growth. You don't need permission to rise. Your elevation doesn't require their approval, because it's backed by the universe. And the ones who are meant to walk with you, they won't need explanations. They'll feel the frequency and meet you there. So instead of defending, build. Instead of explaining, embody. Instead of shrinking, stand taller. Because your silence now carries more truth than all the words you ever spoke trying to be understood. If you're ready to stop explaining and start embodying, comment. My rise is sacred. I no longer explain what was divinely designed. Because next, Capricorn, we enter the heart of this journey. The soul lesson that was hidden beneath all the pain. Why you were removed, and who you are now called to become. Part 7, the soul lesson. Capricorn, after all the silence, after all the ache, after all the walking away, one truth begins to rise. You were never meant to belong. You were meant to become. The discomfort, the disconnection, the distance. They weren't detours. They were initiations. Because souls like yours don't just fit in. They come to restructure, to interrupt, to transform everything they touch. And yes, it's exhausting. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it would have been easier to just stay quiet. But you weren't born to be quiet, Capricorn. You were born to be clarity in a world addicted to confusion. You were born to break cycles by refusing to repeat them. The real lesson was never about escaping your family. It was about redefining what family means. It was never about hating the people who couldn't see you. It was about no longer betraying yourself just to be seen. It was never about proving anything to them. It was about finally remembering who you were, before the world told you who to be. Capricorn, you've spent your life being the responsible one, the stable one, the strong one. But now it's your turn to be the free one. Free to create new patterns. Free to love without performance. Free to lead without explaining. Free to build a life that makes your soul feel at home, not just your role. And here's the most sacred truth of all. You didn't lose them. You found yourself. And when you meet the ones who feel like home without effort, when you build the life that doesn't suffocate your truth, when you finally rest in a space that doesn't ask you to apologize for your light, you'll understand. It was never about separation. It was always about elevation. If your soul feels this truth, write in the comments. I was never meant to belong. I was meant to become. Because now, we arrive at the final step of your journey, Capricorn. A moment of closure and a call to rise even higher. In the conclusion, I will remind you why the ashes were sacred. And why from those ashes, a truer, freer version of you is being born. Conclusion, from ashes to ascent. Capricorn, take a breath. Look at where you began this journey. Confused. Misunderstood. Wrestling with the weight of guilt for simply outgrowing the room you were raised in. And now you understand that this ache was never abandonment. It was your soul preparing for ascent. The burning bridges, they were sacred fires. Not sent to destroy you, but to burn away every illusion that kept you small. That silence, it wasn't rejection. It was a sanctuary being built, so your voice could return home to itself. That sense of not belonging, it was your highest self whispering, We were never meant to belong. We were always meant to lead. So walk forward now, Capricorn, not in sorrow, but in sovereignty. The family that sees you is coming. The path that fits your feet is clearing. And the version of you that was once silenced is now stepping fully into the light. You don't have to explain. You don't have to beg. You don't have to prove. Because your presence now speaks louder than your past. If this message stirred something in you, if it felt like I was speaking a truth you've never dared to say out loud, then don't let it end here. Comment below. I'm not leaving my truth behind. I'm walking toward it. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel, Zodiac Secrets Revealed. Because here, we don't just talk about stars. We talk about souls. We reveal the hidden paths you were always meant to walk. We tell the truth no one else dares to speak about, Capricorn. Your story isn't over. It's just finally being told in your own voice.